Wonderful. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Hang on a second. Hang on one second. There we go. Okay. Yes. So this morning, my talk, as you know, is entitled Karma and Grace. And there are a lot of views. There are a lot of views and some misunderstandings about just what karma is. I saw a meme that read, "I believe in karma. That means I can do bad things to people all day long, and I assume they deserve it." Another read, "I wish you could order karma like flowers and have it delivered." Another one, "I wish karma had a tip line." It does actually. But we tend to sometimes think of karma as this meting out of deserved justice by a punishing God that keeps score. But it is actually something altogether different than that. Karma, the word karma, is a Sanskrit word that means action. And in the Hindu and Buddhist tradition, uh, which Charles Fillmore was aligned with, it means the sum of a person's actions in this and previous states of existence. The sum of a person's actions in this and previous existences, you could say lifetimes, viewed as deciding their fate in future existences. So, karma keeps humans bound to the ever turning wheel of rebirth, so they say. And it is actually also essential to our evolution. In this world of nature, in this physical world, we have certain laws that create order. The creator, being the genius of geniuses, couldn't just fashion the substance and energy and space into millions of stars and planets and just let them whirl just anywhere, right? The source of everything put this whole system, this whole universe under a set of laws. And one of those laws is the law of cause and effect, also called karma, the law of action. And this law of action and reaction is how we learn. Think about it, as a little child, if you learn that if you pull the tail of a cat, you will likely end up getting scratched. Pulling the tail was a cause and getting scratched was the effect. And we learned something from that. We learned something important. Don't hurt animals, don't pull their tails, right? Similarly, we learn that if we're loving and kind to someone, they will probably be kind to us in return. We learn the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This law is part of the natural order of things. In Paramahansa Yogananda's book, Karma and Reincarnation, he wrote, "Such is the law of karma. As you sow, so shall you reap. If you sow evil, you will reap evil in the form of suffering. And if you sow goodness, you will reap goodness in the form of inner joy." I love that. In the form of inner joy. If there was no law of cause and effect in this physical world, there would be chaos. In the world of values, people wouldn't know whether they were to expect good or bad from their actions. Now, some sects of Christianity think they don't believe in karma, and yet it's perfectly expressed in Galatians chapter 6, verse 7. It reads, "Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap." And the Christians, in fact, believed in reincarnation. I mentioned this a few weeks ago on my talk on reincarnation. They believed in reincarnation until about 553 AD, when a Roman emperor decided it was heresy. Now, we sow through what we think, we sow through what we say, we sow through what we do. And our thinking is already a kind of action. Charles Fillmore said it so succinctly: thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Our thought held in mind is the cause, and what it produces is the effect. So, with our God given free will, we have the freedom to think whatever thoughts we choose. And through our will and our thoughts, we direct energy, and that energy acts upon matter. And causing effects in this physical world is how we grow. It's how we learn and evolve. So, this law of karma is not punishment. It's not a punishment. It is rather a means for us to learn right from wrong, to learn what is virtuous and not virtuous. And through that, we move towards enlightenment. We move towards that awakening. Now, there's three core things that carry karma forward and keep us on this wheel of reincarnating. And those three things are attachment, aversion, and ignorance. Let me read you something from a commentary on Patanjali's yoga. It's from this wonderful book called How to Know God. It reads, this doctrine of karma and reincarnation, which at first seems so grim and heartless, actually implies a profoundly optimistic belief in the justice and order of the universe. If it is we and not God or our parents or our fellow men who have made our present predicament, then it is we who can change it. We have no excuse for self pity and no reason for despair. We are not helplessly doomed. We are under no mysterious prenatal curse. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars. All we need is courage and determination not to give up the struggle. Yeah. I personally see karma as a neutral force, as a very benign force and with a benign purpose. And that is to help us understand our actions. You see little babies, and they're just beginning to feel a sense of me and my and mine, right? And they get attached to a certain toy. That's my toy, right? And they go berserk if another child picks up that toy. And then they get to go to their room and cry when mommy sees their possessiveness. And they don't know yet why sharing and generosity is a good thing. But maybe a month later, they're playing with their little friend and their friend shares their toy with them. And they think, oh, it's so nice to be able to play with my friend's toy, right? Maybe if I can learn to share, we'll all have more toys to play with. So this is growth. This is how this child learns to be less selfish and to act in a way that's good for everybody. So, here's the big picture in my view. This that we call God created us all out of itself and gave us all a whole bunch of art supplies, wonderful art supplies, and said, paint your life with wild colors, have fun, and create. And the art supplies are our thoughts and our words and our actions and our consciousness. And that consciousness can be unlimited if we learn how to make it so. So we want to have fun and paint our life and take action and see what the reaction is and learn, refine, and explore. And through it all, most of all, feel wonder and have fun and enjoy, feel wonder at it all. In this creative process of living in form, we eventually learn to act in ways that are most aligned with our true nature as love, our true nature as truth, our true nature as divine humans. Emerson wrote, he had this beautiful quote about the law of cause and effect. And he described that we are the molders of our destiny. We are the molders of our destiny. And he wrote, the world looks like a mathematical equation, which, turn it how you will, balances itself. Every secret is told, every crime is punished, every virtue rewarded, every wrong redressed in silence and certainty. He was quite insightful. And so, the point that I want to make is that karma is not a punishing thing. It's actually a perfect way for us to grow. It enables us to grow in divine wisdom. And it's not written in stone. That's the beauty of karma. It's not written in stone. Our free will and also divine grace can change the course of events in our life, or at least mitigate them greatly. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But I think it's important that we hold the mistakes we make in life with compassion. If we have learned something, it was not a mistake. It was not a wasted lesson. Sometimes in New Thought circles, I think, people think if you go through suffering or if you go through hardship, you're doing something wrong. You're not thinking right, or you're being punished by the karma god. And I think that view is too limited. And I say that from direct experience because when I self reflect on my own life, I see the hardest experiences brought forth the greatest growth. The most difficult times, like a couple years ago, losing my home in the campfire, losing everything, facing so much loss, and then 7 weeks later, having a fall and breaking my knee. That period that I went through, it demanded I dig so deep. And all my current understanding and knowledge at that time, it was not enough. I had to find a deeper wisdom, deeper understanding, deeper truth that could help me through those deeper challenges. The wonderful yogi and prolific writer Sri Aurobindo, love his works. He wrote, "What of suffering and happiness? What of misfortune and prosperity? What of these polarities in life? These are experiences," he says, "of the soul in its training, helps, props, means, disciplines, tests, ordeals. And prosperity is often a worse ordeal than suffering. Indeed, suffering may often be regarded rather as a reward to virtue than as a punishment for sin, since it turns out to be the greatest help and purifier of the soul struggling to unfold itself." Well, that's a mouthful. But I love what he's saying there because his view flips our idea of karma on its head. It makes me wonder, maybe we are most blessed if we are facing hardship and finding greater strength and becoming more free through it. I think of the trials of Nelson Mandela, what he went through. He was like this amazing being, but he was in jail for 27 years. And that's when he came out and began his work, really, in earnest. He was a very evolved soul, and yet that was part of his journey. Hmm. I think of Jesus. He only lived 33 years and he had a really awful death. And we don't view that, though, as bad karma. The way he died forgiving, is the greatest teaching on forgiveness that we have in this world. So Aurobindo speaks of extreme hardship as training, as tests and ordeals. So my point is, don't feel like you're doing something wrong if you're facing big challenges. Difficulty might even be your good karma. Let that be food for thought. Difficulty might be your good karma. Here's another quote from Aurobindo on that. "Indeed, adversity, suffering may often be regarded rather as a reward to virtue than as a punishment for sin, since it turns out to be the greatest help and purifier of the soul struggling to unfold itself. To regard it merely as the stern judge, the stern award of a judge, the anger of an irritated ruler, or even the mechanical recoil of evil causing evil, is to take the most superficial view of God's dealings with the soul and the law of the world's evolution." So powerful. Aurobindo, you have to read in small doses, and then just like it's like eating a very, very rich dessert. Now, there is our own personal karma, and there is also collective karma. Families have karma, countries have karma. Yogananda wrote back after World War II ended. He wrote about how much the United States accrued good karma in stepping in and ending that World War II. He wrote, "America, as the liberator in World War II of Russia, England, Europe, and India, has stored up enough good karma to defeat any aggressor, no matter how powerful, by making the enemy commit blunders in politics and strategy, should there be a third world war. The generosity of America is storing up for her much good karma, according to the law that determines world conditions." And he went on to say something very comforting. He said, "Oh, and so, dear Americans, rest assured that even if the Third World War should come, The U.S. shall be victor because she possesses the greatest good karma. I thought that was so interesting to read. I'm not sure what Yogananda would say about our recent years of nationalism and racism and division, but if we learn from it, if we have learned from it, and we move forward more consciously and we make changes, then it will have served a purpose. Okay. Now we see karma in families. Boy, do I ever see it in my family. Some families seem to thrive, and some seem to go through so much trial and suffering. I think of the Kennedys. One person in a family who gains merit and lives virtuously can benefit their entire family. And you really sense karmic bonds between a parent and child. They're probably the strongest. And also between siblings and also between partners, life partners. A sense that there are things our souls need to work out with certain other souls. So there's three kinds of karma. The first is that which has been created and stored up that'll bear fruit in the future, in this life or in the next. And then secondly, there's karma created in our past or previous life that is bearing fruit right now. And then there's karma we're creating now that will bear fruit in the future. This already existing karma is beyond our control, but we can lessen it through spiritual practice and through grace, which I'll get to, I promise, in a minute. But the karma which we're now creating, the pain which is yet to come, so to speak, can be avoided. Not by not taking actions, because this is a world of form. This is a world of action. It'd be impossible not to act. But by dedicating our every action and the fruit of our actions to God, to the source of all life. Think about it. If you dedicated every action to God or whatever, your word for God is, to the Divine Mother or to Jesus Christ or to Spirit, if you dedicated your action to the divine, it'd be pretty hard to dedicate anger. It'd be hard to dedicate resentful thoughts. You know, um, you could, it'd be hard to dedicate being rude to someone, you know, so that would make you uncomfortable. And so that gets you in the habit of dedicating, if we get in the habit of dedicating whatever we think and whatever we say or write or we're going to do to the divine, we become more vigilant of what we're thinking and make sure that what we're about to do or say is worthy of dedicating to the divine. And if the action isn't worthy, we don't do it. So this is how our mind and heart become purified in our karma lessons. A simple thing to remember is just do no harm, very Buddhist teaching. Commit each day to do no harm. Sometimes we're not up to bringing radiant love and light. Sometimes we are, and God bless us when we do. But, we can probably be successful in simply doing no harm. And some days that is quite good enough. Okay. So the last thing about karma, Vedic astrology describes that we sometimes go through periods where we seem to be facing and meeting a lot of difficult past karma. In Vedic astrology, they pay close attention to the planets and they do fire pujas to mitigate certain periods of malefic influence. I've spent a lot of years in India, and it's very common to do pujas with. I remember doing a puja with 35,000 people to these planets, to these malefic influences, to mitigate the karma, the difficult karma. But I personally went through one of these difficult karmic periods it really stood out because it was just like, gosh, this life is just dangerous during this period. It was about 22 years ago, and I had three things happen in about a 4-month period that seemed to be near awful. Three accidents. But each time I seemed to skirt a really awful outcome. The first thing that happened was I was getting pine needles off my woodshed outside my house, and I fell off the roof of my woodshed and I landed on my deck on my tailbone. And for about 2 minutes, I couldn't move my legs. And then the feeling came back. So I was so fortunate and I was okay. I was just bruised. And then about a month later, I walked out to my front porch. I was leaving the house, and I fell right through the deck through this rotted piece of wood. My leg went through the porch all the way up to my thigh. And it just amazingly was just scraped and bruised, and it wasn't broken. It didn't need stitches. So I just barely missed, what could have been really bad. Then about 2 months after that, um, I parked my car at the post office here in Mount Shasta is on a slight hill, and I thought I pulled the emergency brake up, but I didn't pull it up quite enough. I had a stick shift. And as I was walking from my car into the post office, people started yelling, "Your car's rolling backwards." And I looked over, and there was my car slowly rolling backwards towards plowing into a bunch of cars and people. And so without a second thought, I ran behind my car and I flung open the door and I got my foot on the brake. Um, but the car was rolling, and so that open door and all that weight just nearly crushed me in my leg. And it came back on my leg. But again, it wasn't broken. And it just ended up being bruised. And I spent a week on crutches. So anyway, three things, it's like, wow, in the period of 4 months. So that week that I hurt myself with the car rolling backwards, I flew to Dallas to see Alma. She was on her tour, and I flew to sing and be with her. And I went up for Darshan on my crutches, and she asked what happened, and I described it, and I described, what's been happening the last couple months. And after she kind of gently scolded me for not being, vigilant to pull that emergency brake all the way up, she lovingly told me that I was going through a period of clearing some difficult karma. And because of the intensity of the spiritual practice that I was doing and how devoted I was to my spiritual life, she said my karma was greatly mitigated and that there was a lot of divine grace. And so, you know, what would have been really bad was much less lessened. So I really feel that our dedication to our spiritual life, our dedication to love, our dedication to doing no harm, our own efforts from our own self-will, but also combined with divine grace, can mitigate our karma. So finally, before I close, what is divine grace? There's a great definition of grace. Grace is a mysterious thing, but there's a great definition in Unity's Handbook of Positive Prayer, and it reads, grace is God's gift of love and mercy, given freely to us, whether we deserve it or not. We cannot steal, borrow, buy, or earn it. We can only accept it or refuse it. And I would add to that, divine grace it's really synonymous with spirit. It's like the qualities of spirit raining down. It's receiving the blessings of the presence of spirit. And it is always, always there. It is always available, but we must be receptive to receive it. And so, really, all spiritual practice is for the purpose of becoming receptive to grace, to divine grace. There's a wonderful metaphor that divine grace shines through the skylight of our inner roof. And so we need to go upstairs. In other words, elevate or raise our energy, open and purify our mind and heart, and be receptive in our body to receive the light of grace. Prayer, meditation, yoga, mantra, breathing practice, seva, serving others, walking meditations are all ways to align and to open and stay open to divine grace. It's like we have an antenna, our spine, and there's like a subtle center in our body, and that divine antenna can be tuned. We can keep it tuned, and then we're always picking up divine grace, always receiving it. So, in closing, I really hope this talk has shed some light on what karma is. I'd love to have a short discussion afterwards and hear your ideas or any questions. But this, really looking at what this law of cause and effect is and how it serves our growth and evolution, and how offering our actions to God is a beautiful way to check those actions at the gate before we create with them. And also, how grace is always here for us to remember that. Grace is an unconditional love, it's peace, it's blessedness that just wants to fill us, wants to shine through us and shine into our inner skylight as often as we can keep ourselves open to receiving it. So may the blessings of infinite grace be with you, be with us all. Thank you. God bless.